Hey crafters, Lisa here from Fun Stuff Crafts. So glad you could join me here again today. Hey you guys, life is crazy out there right now with the coronavirus going on, but I want to make sure that we find some normalcy in life. And so I am dedicated to continue to bring you my Inspiration Friday projects. So what have I got going today? Well, today we are going to work on a game that you can either play inside or outside, and I'm using one of the pine rounds that I've used before on some of my trays. So it's a really fun project and I really hope you guys like it. And hey, by the way, if you're new to my channel and just stopping by for the first time today, please make sure you subscribe. There's a subscribe button down below and please click on it. And then if you click on that little bell, each time I upload a new video, YouTube should notify you that I've got something new and exciting. And if you guys want to follow me on social media, I will put the links down below to that also. So let's get started. Let me change my camera angle and we are going to start making a game that I have named Hook It. Okay, so the first step to make this Hook It game is we need to prep our board. Now, as I said in the directions, I started out with a round that I picked up at Home Depot. And I'm just checking the back of this. So my round is, trying to see the size of my round. This is a 1 by 23 3/4 round. So it's a really good size round. They do have a smaller round too, but I really thought for the game this would be a good size round. So what we need to do first is we're going to do a couple things. The first thing we're going to do is these boards come pretty well sanded, but I like to run my sanding block. Now I like these little sanding blocks. I picked them up at Harbor Freight and I use these quite a bit. So I'm just going to go over, and you can just barely feel some imperfections in the wood. So I'm just going to run this over. Then what we're going to do is we're going to put a thin coat of Mod Podge on. Now the reason why I do the Mod Podge is it really helps the vinyl adhere. If I tried to put the permanent vinyl right on the wood, I really struggle with getting it on. Once you get it on, it will stay. But you will see this is my little trick that I learned from many other crafters is put a little bit of Mod Podge on and it will go on really nice. So we're going to go ahead and sand. And I'm going to mute so you guys don't have to listen to the sanding, but that's what I'm going to do right now. Okay, as you guys probably saw, I was feeling it with my hand just to see how that finish felt. So that feels really nice right now. So I'm going to take a paper towel. You could take a tack cloth, whatever you have available, but we want to get some of that sawdust off. Or from the sanding. It's not really sawdust yet, but so we want to get as much as that off. So I'm just going to take that off. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we are going to add our Mod Podge. I saw that fell down while I was sanding away. So again, I am using just the basic matte finish Mod Podge. You could use the gloss. It really doesn't matter. Basically, what we want to do is like I say, you can use either one, but we just want to put a thin layer on. We're not doing it super thick. I am going to go across the entire board though. Now I've used Varathane also. That's another option. This one just doesn't require me to take this board outside. So that's kind of why I decided to use the Mod Podge. I can do it all back here in my craft room. And this dries really quite fast. And so I'm just going to cover the whole board. And then while the board is drying, I'm actually going to go over to my Cricut and I am going to cut out my design. Now I've decided this one is for a friend's birthday. And so he owns his own business. So I thought it would be really fun to put his logo on it. But you know, the options are really endless. What you can do from the background part of this is, you know, your favorite sports team. You know, someone's going off to college. I mean, this is actually a game that you could do it on a smaller board and somebody could take it to college and have in their dorm room. Or you've got someone that you're doing a housewarming, attending a housewarming party. Great gifts. So birthdays, even wedding presents. This one, my husband and I said we are going to make another one to put in our camper so we can use it when we go camping. So again, the only reason that I am putting this Mod Podge on the board is so my vinyl will adhere. We are going to put a epoxy finish on this, so this will hold up really well outdoors. But you guys can see it's just a real thin layer. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and let that dry now. And while that's drying, I'm going to go over and I'm going to cut out my design, and I will provide the cut file that I use down in the descriptions, and what it will be is it'll be a link to my resource page. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for you guys, and then I will join you back here once I've actually cut it out, and we'll start applying the vinyl, which will be a decal of my friend's business, and then all the numbers that go on the board that actually make up how you score points in the Hook It game. So give me a second, we'll get our camera angle changed, and we will move on to applying vinyl once this is dry. So we just got done weeding my vinyl, and just as a reminder, you guys, I talk about it all the time, but this is my pin that I use from 651 Vinyl that really helps with my weeding. Also get almost all of my vinyl from 651 also. So what we're going to do now is we are going to place the design right on the board. Now, my Mod Podge is all dried, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to place the logo, and then I've got the numbers, and then I did up a little design for the name of the game, which online I see a lot of people calling it Hooky, and I've decided to call it Hook It. So we're going to go ahead and place the decal up there. We're going to put the numbers. Now, one thing I did do is I went ahead and just so I can make sure I place the numbers correctly, I just wrote out a piece of paper with them. So basically the way the numbers work for the game is it's almost like clockwork. It's, you know, going around in a circle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Almost like a dartboard would be, with 13 being a bullseye right in the middle. So we're going to go ahead and put our vinyl on some transfer tape, and then we're going to start applying it to the board. So give me just a second to grab some transfer tape, and we'll move on to our next step. So we're going to put our transfer tape on now, and I want to show you two types of transfer tape I really like. And transfer tape is really a preference. You really got to determine what you like. I started using the blue grid transfer tape originally. This is all I ever used. And then I discovered this other transfer tape, and I'll put links to both these transfer tapes down below. But this one, I had to do some really big projects at Christmas time, and I just really learned that I really like this one too. So transfer tape, see which ones you like the best. I'm going to go ahead and use this transfer tape. The other thing you want to think about is what I have also found is if you're dealing with glitter, you use a different type of transfer tape. But this is just your basic outdoor vinyl, and we're going to go ahead and use this transfer tape. So I'm going to go ahead and do the decals first for the business name. And so I'm just going to cut a little bit of transfer tape. I'm going to put this right on, just spread it out that way. And I'm going to go ahead and pull in the second part of the decal right there so I can have these all together. And you know, you want the transfer tape to be smooth, but it doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to make sure that the vinyl itself is not wrinkled. So let's go ahead and just cut that out. So I've got those two on. I don't have them quite adhered as well as I'd like to yet. And then let's go ahead and grab this part. I'm going to just throw that in there. Sometimes I like to grab as much as I can, but you don't want to try to do too much at once because then sometimes you create a little bit of a mess. So let's go ahead and just measure that on. Not quite going to grab it all for me, but that's okay. Put that one under. Okay. trim this off. Transfer tape off to the side, and this little piece, this is a trick I've learned, this little piece I'll just trim right up here, and I'm going to put him right over the 9, okay? So then what we want to do is just make sure our transfer tape is on there very well. And you guys can see I have a few wrinkles. It's not perfect, but the vinyl is not wrinkled down below, so we're okay with that part, okay? So let's go ahead and do it with the decal. And then what we're going to do is just one by one, we're going to put each one of these decals on. And I'm going to start with the logos first to get them placed, and then I will work the numbers around them. Now, like I said, it's kind of in a clockwork fashion, and so we'll be able to do that. So I really thought if I could get my logo placed first, which I've got, and then this flame goes right up there. I'm going to try to do that as high up as possible, but I also want to remember that the number 1 is our first hook, so I want to be careful about how I place that there. So I'm going to go on here, and I'm just going to do a little bit of measurements. I'm going to get this part placed, and then my hook it, I'm actually going to put it down here at the bottom. And so I've got my handy dandy large ruler that I have from Cricut, and I'm going to use that to help in my placement. So it's an 18-inch ruler, so I'm placing that down at the bottom where I can see where my middle is. So with it being 18 inches, of course 9 is going to be my middle. So let's just go ahead and take this decal off. So we'll go ahead and start with my little Hook It logo that I made up. And I'm going to find where the center of it is. And I'm going to put this one down low. Let's reference our numbers again, how our numbers are going to fall. I'm going to have a 5. So I actually think I'm going to raise that up just a little bit so I can have the 5 underneath of it. Okay, so I'm going to put that just like that. And this is what I wanted to show you guys. By doing that little piece of Mod Podge the way that we did, it is going to see how easy my vinyl is adhering to it. And sometimes I just like to use my scraper just to pull it back that way, but see how easy that actually went on. So I'm going to go ahead and just continue putting these on around. Probably fast forward it. You guys don't need to go with me the whole time I'm doing it, but let's go ahead and get that done, and then I'll join you back because the next step we're going to do is to put the hooks in to the board. Okay, so I have went ahead and got all of my numbers applied along with the logo, and you can see I've already put a couple of the hooks in. That is our next step. So the hooks that I'm using, I picked up at Home Depot. They're the Everbuilt, and it is the number 10 square bend. So they actually have just a right angle on them, and they have a screw at the end, so they work really great. And I'll make sure all the supplies I'm using today, I'm going to make sure I put the links down below for you. So what I found is you may have success just drilling or screwing yours right in by hand, but I actually have my handy dandy little power drill, and so I'm just going to do a couple little starts of a hole, and just to help me with the start of each one of these. And so I'll just show you a couple of these, and then we'll go ahead and get one screwed in so you guys can see it. And this just helps me get a good start. And then the other thing that I like to do is I just use my needle nose pliers. It could be, you know, any type of plier or anything is what you're going to want to use. But it just helps get a good hold. So I like to start to screw mine in. My husband always taught me righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So I just get that started. And then I just take my needle nose pliers and bring it around. So pretty pretty easy. Just takes a little bit of time to get all these hooks in, but it's pretty easy to do. The one thing you want to watch is to make sure that your hook is in straight. So like by me sitting right here right now, there, I could just see that one moved a little bit. So then what we're going to do is once I have all of these guys installed, we are going to add a layer of epoxy. Now the reason why I'm doing the epoxy, we did put permanent vinyl on, and permanent vinyl adheres really well to this wood, but we want this to weather really well outside. So I'm going to go ahead and the next thing we'll do after we get all these hooks on is we will put some epoxy in. Now the epoxy is probably the longest part of the project because you do want it to sit for, I like to say 72 hours. It's always good to give it a good time for drying. So we're going to go ahead and get that applied, and then after, I'll join you back in a couple days, a couple minutes for you guys on video. But then what we'll be doing is just applying the back hook to the project, and then I'll show you the rings that we're going to be using for it. Actually purchase those online, and then I am going to have a link in the project that will give you all the game rules. There's like 5 different versions, and there's actually a worldwide ring toss association that gives you some ideas. Or of course you can make it up on your own. But I'll give you all of those in the links below, and it will most likely link out to my blog post. But I'm just going to keep applying all of these, which is going to take me a little bit of time, and then I'm going to join you back when we get ready to mix our epoxy together, and then I'm going to show you how we're going to apply that epoxy. One of the reasons why I wanted to get the hooks in first is with that finish of the epoxy, it's really going to make these hooks be really solid in here. So I'm going to go ahead and keep doing this, and I will join you back once I get all of these hooks in. So my arm's a little sore, I must admit, but I do have all of the hooks in place, and I have eyeballed all of them to make sure they're in facing the right direction, not tilted in anything. Don't want to make the game harder than it already is to get a ringer. And so what we're going to do now is I'm actually going to set this off to the side for just a second, and we are going to mix our epoxy together. So you can purchase amazing epoxy in the small containers. I do a lot of tumblers and a lot of other projects, so from an economical standpoint, I've just bought gallons. I will tell you I've had these gallons for, oh gosh, probably 8 to 9 months, so they last pretty well for me. And so what the Amazing Clear Cast is it's a part A and it's a part B. And so what you need to do is you want to make sure that you measure exact. And so I've picked up, and again, I'll link these down below, I picked up these little medicine cup measurings. And so what we're going to do is each cup is 2 tablespoons. And so I'm going to start out with 4 tablespoons of each, part A and part B, and then I'm going to mix it into a 3rd cup so I can make sure I get it right. Now, I will tell you, epoxy you do not want to get on your hands, and so I definitely recommend using rubber gloves, and so I always have a stock of those. I find my gloves the best price at Harbor Freight, and so I always have those on hand. So the epoxy is the part B definitely comes out easier than the part A, and you'll see how long it takes me to do part A. But what I'm going to do is, again, I have got the 2 tablespoons. Let me turn that so I can measure it, see it. So I'm watching that exactly, and yep, I've got 2 there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and I'm going to pour it into the other cup. Now, if I was making a smaller batch, I would still do the exact same thing. You always want to put it in a next cup. It really helps with measurements. So there's really no shortcut to mixing epoxy. Um, I just find follow the directions and your epoxy will set firm. If you try to guess your measurements, I've seen some people that do it, but that is one of the reasons why I also see or hear of people saying, why doesn't my epoxy set right? And it's because you do not have the exact measurements. So very, very important. So you guys will notice I used part B in this 1 cup. Okay, and you guys saw how quick it was to fill up that. Now I'm going to do part A, and let me tell you, part A takes a little bit longer to pump. It is the more consistent side, and so my pumping will definitely take a little bit longer here. We'll just, sometimes I think pouring it out would be quicker. This is painfully slow, you guys. I apologize. You do want to make sure that we, and you guys, just for the sake of time, I am going to try to see if I can just come out this way. I'm actually going to lay that and do what I always say I don't normally do, but I'm going to go ahead and try to pour this one out for you guys because this is probably time for me to get a new pump. But again, I'm still watching my measurements. I'm watching that. And I've got right at the 2, and so I'm going to put that into the other cup. Do 1 more. Pouring is definitely going to be quicker for this part. And then the piece that takes a little bit of time here too is we are going to want to make sure that we stir it really well. When I add the part A and the part B together, it creates some bubbles. And so we are going to want to make sure that we stir it. Now, I normally say to stir about a good 2 minutes. So while I am stirring this, you guys, I will tell you, I'm going to fast forward for you, but you want to stir. I'm going to get these out of the way and put them in the garbage. Also going to move our epoxy off in the back. Put that back in there. Actually, I'm just going to put those away. And then what I want to do is, you guys are not going to be able to see this from the camera angle I'm at today, but what I'm doing is I'm just slowly stirring this. I'm going to move over and see if I can show you guys this just a little bit closer up. And so you guys can actually see how it's got those air bubbles, and it's kind of a milky look right now. We are going to stir it for 2 minutes, and it's going to become a lot clearer. So I'm going to go ahead and literally just watch my clock that I have on the other side of the room, and I'm just going to sit here and stir. Now, you want to stir slow too. You don't want to do it too fast, because if you do it too fast, what you do is you create air bubbles. And so you just want to get it mixed up really well. Get that all mixed up. And then what we're going to do is we're actually just going to pour this right onto the board. And I'll show you how I raise the board up, because we want to make sure that we get the sides of the board and also the front part of the board. So I'm just going to sit here and stir, and we'll fast forward through it. And as soon as I'm done stirring, we'll get this poured on the board. Okay, so it has been about 2 minutes and I've got this stirred up very well. And so what I'm going to do now is I am going to bring my board in. Now I have got a Lazy Susan that I picked up and I really like using it because it is going to get my board off the ground or off the tabletop. And so I am going to be able to let it drip. It also gives me the ability to move it around as I need. Now, I will tell you, when you're putting on the epoxy, the other reason that you wear your gloves is we are actually going to spread the epoxy around with our gloves. So I'm literally just going to pour this and go around all of our numbers so we get a good... So basically, I think about how we used to finger paint when we were younger. That's literally what it's almost like we're going to be doing. And so there's still a little bit in the cup. I'm just going to leave it there for right now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start spreading this around. Then the other thing we'll do is we will use some heat to help even it out. So you guys can see this Lazy Susan I've got works really nice. Started using that with the wood round trays that I do. Now I want to make sure that when I'm bringing in the epoxy that we are going around the wood screws. The main reason we're putting the epoxy on, one, is just to give it a really nice finish, but the other is we're just really sealing in our numbers. So that way our numbers are going to wear really well if we have this hung up outside. The best idea for the game is to, and we're going to add a hook on the back, is to put it on like a fence post or a gate post, or I mean, you can definitely put it on the wall. You can definitely play this inside, no doubt about it. And so all I'm doing is going around and just really evening out all that epoxy. So again, I'm just taking it around all my hooks, making sure my hooks are in there. This is why you always put your hooks in first. Okay, and then I'm going to bring that all around the edges. My excess, I'm going to start working around the edges. Just working it. So I'd love to hear your guys' comments. What do you guys think about this project? You know, you can do the different size rounds too. Don't forget. Now I did a large round, but you definitely can do the smaller size also. I've seen these online where you can buy them. You still have to put the screws in and kind of put them together, and this is definitely a more economical way to make the project. There's no doubt about it. These rounds, depending on the size that you get from Home Depot, are really reasonably priced. I love to have the rounds on hand because that's what I use for my trays that I make, or the established signs. I do a lot of established signs for people for wedding presents. It's a great go-to wedding present. I did a YouTube video on those, and I'll make sure I link that on so you guys just can see another use of the rounds. So right now I'm just bringing some of that excess down and around so I can make sure that the seal comes around the edges. Again, this is why I call it kind of like our finger painting. Now you don't have to have a Lazy Susan, but I'll tell you, this works really nice. I think I picked this up at a second-hand store. And I'll tell you, I bought it because I was going to redo it, and now I use it for so many of my craft things that I don't know what I'd do if I didn't have it. So it's turned into a tool to help me with crafting versus a upcycle project. So okay, so now I think I've got a pretty good coat around. Now any bubbles that you have, I'm going to show you another trick. Any bubbles that you have on we're going to apply some heat, and the heat actually will pop all the bubbles, and it actually will help smooth out everything too, just to make sure that we don't have any bumps, or make it even. Now, I do see that I got a little bit on my hooks, so you just want to go around and use your glove just to wipe off the excess on the hooks. A little bit extra on this top part, and so I'm going to bring it down because my edge down here could just use with a little bit more. I'll tell you guys, I've been having so much fun with this epoxy. I don't know if you guys saw one of my last videos, I did an epoxy tray, and that just turned out so good, and it was so fun to do. Just really seals everything in so nice. Okay, so I think that I've got a good seal here, good layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab my heat gun, and we are going to just run over it. Now, one thing I do like to do is I do like my epoxy to sit for a little while, and then I'll run the heat over it again. But right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove my gloves. I'm going to grab my heat gun. A couple more spots. I just feel I got some excess up there on the sides. Just trying to get that side so it's nice and smooth when you pick it up. Like I say, you don't need to do the underneath. You absolutely can do the underneath after we're all done with this top part. It would just make your process be a little bit longer, of course. But we actually could spray a coat on the back just to preserve the wood. But the front part is what we're really concerned about. So I think we're in good shape here, you guys. I'm going to go ahead and remove my gloves, grab my heat gun, and I'll be right back with you. I have my heat gun, and this is actually my embossing gun is what I'm using for my heat gun. And I'm just going to put it on a low setting, and just from the angle I'm at, I can see where I've got some bubbles, and so I'm just trying to pop my bubbles. I also see I'm going to go grab my gloves, actually, with my popsicle stick. I actually see where I've got some areas that I didn't get epoxy on. So it's good if you come at a different angle, because I can definitely see where I just need to get a little bit of heat, and the heat is actually helping spread my epoxy. And you guys, I'm going to grab another popsicle stick. Should have had that with me, but I'm just going to grab that because I can see now that I've decided to stand up, I can see a couple areas that I do not have epoxy in. Just want to make sure, especially around those hooks, make sure we got a good coating of the epoxy. This is the one I definitely could see I didn't have. So just go around real slow. And we just want to make sure that we've got everything covered. And we're popping all those air bubbles. So this is basically it for the project, you guys. I'm going to let this set for 72 hours. And then what we'll do when we come back is we're actually going to add a hook to the back of it. And that is basically our project of how we were able to do a DIY hook it board. We just used a round from Home Depot. We used our Cricut to make our letters. And this is just turning out really, really nice, you guys. So I will join you back after this is dried and we will do our next step. And here you have it, the finished product. The only thing I did after it had finished drying was to add a hanger on the back. And then, of course, my husband and I decided to play the game a little bit. So we went and we hung it up outside and we started throwing the rings. Now, I will hook on a link to the silicone rings that we purchased off of Amazon. But this was such a fun project to make. So I hope you like it, and if you did, give it a thumbs up, and make sure you check out other DIY projects on my blog at funstuffcrafts.com.